We're back in Soul Country here with Cedric Burnside.
What up, what up?
Episode 2 of Season 4. So here you are, man. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me, man.
Say you love me like I love you. Say you love me like I love you. I love the way we dream, the way we treat each other, yeah. And you don't really have to be there, no, to show me love like I love you.
My big daddy, R.L. Burnside. You know, I grew up in his house amongst a lot of other grandchildren, you know. And he used to throw house parties every other weekend. And I would be one of many grandchildren just sitting there, you know, kicking up dust while the music going on. My dad, Calvin Jackson, you know, my uncles, Daniel Burnside and Joseph Burnside. And as they would play, man, I was one of, you know, the grandkids. It was just amazing to me. I would look at them and I would be like, wow, what is this music? So around about 10 years old, I was good enough to play in the juke joints. My uncle Gary Burnside, he was playing the bass, I was playing the drums. The area I come from, and still there, I grew up in, is the hill country. It's a blues that's unique to the surroundings that it's from. I like to think of it as just a music within its own self, you know, with its own rights. It's different from any other blues you might hear. You know, when you think of blues, you think of 12-bar blues or 1-4-5 blues. But hill country is you know, quite different from that. You know, I like to say what stands out is the unorthodox rhythm of the music. It's not your regular 1-4-5 pattern that you might be, you know, thinking about or listening at when you think about blues. My big daddy would play Muddy Waters, which is, you know, Delta blues. I would listen at it and I would love it, but I didn't know Muddy Waters at the time, nor did I know anything about, you know, the Delta blues. Of course, a little Robert Johnson. And then, you know, my big daddy would introduce us to Albert King, which is from Memphis, not far at all, but still quite different, you know. So yeah, those the cats I kind of listened at growing up. Around 2003, I picked up the guitar, and I decided to, you know, not put it down until I learned how to play the guitar. By the way, Luther Dickinson gave me my first guitar in 2003. And around about 2008 or 9, I had, you know, learned the guitar enough to write 3 or 4 songs of my own. I'm not going to say I was great on the guitar, but I was good enough to, you know, learn songs. And so I was playing with a guy named Lightning Malcolm. The band was called Juke Joint Duo. I just took it upon myself to start getting up and playing those 2 or 3 songs that I had learned. You know, I didn't know if people was going to like it or not. When I got to where I can play what I heard in my head, you know, it was around 2011, 2012, you know, and I had got fairly good, and good enough to go out on my own. So this song right here is called Please Tell Me Baby, on one of my first albums that I ever recorded, you know, by myself.
Please tell me, baby, I don't know. Please tell me, baby, yeah.
once said, when I watch a guitar player, I watch his right hand because you got to have good rhythm to be a good player. But I imagine if you're a drummer, that's like kind of the door you're coming into, right? So you could be good with the minimum amount of other things if you got that rhythm there.
If you got that rhythm, you know, and I hear that a lot, you know, in my playing. People say, I hear, you know, the percussion in your playing, in your guitar playing. And I said, you know, I like to think that's because, you know, I was a drummer first.
What about guitar styles? You obviously got your family influences right there in the front. Do you have other main stylistic influences that you look to?
I would say I like a lot of, you know, guitar players. John Lee Hooker is one of my, you know, all-time favorites, along with Mississippi Fred McDowell. But I've been around my Big Daddy so long, you know, RL, and I just always find myself going back to, you know, to him, you know, going back to what he would do on the porch, you know, what I would see him do on the stage when I'm sitting, you know, on the drums behind him. So that's where I always go back to.
What was the best advice you've received from other musicians?
You know, one of the main things I heard a lot was don't stop, you know, keep doing you. Don't ever let anybody, you know, tell you how to do your music. You know, do your music the way you do your music because you're different. Different can be good, you know, if you stick with it. And one of the things my Big Daddy would always tell me is, you know, always treat people like you want to be treated. He always knew, I think, that music would always be a part of my life, and I will always have that, you know, but you got to have some sense with it.
Talking about some other players here, but we mentioned Robert Johnson before. He became an archetype pre-war blues, acoustic blues guy, and you recorded on a tribute album in 2011 for his centennial. How do you see his influence?
I think he was amazing, you know, and his influence for him to only record, you know, I think it was 27 songs total, you know, his whole entire life. Those 27 songs was freaking amazing, you know, and it taught a lot of people, you know, a lot of musicians loved his music, the Rolling Stones, and I mean, just so many people that he influenced. And I did a tour in 2012 with Big Head Todd and the Monsters, which, you know, loved Robert Johnson. And, you know, Mr. Hubert Sumlin would talk about Robert Johnson, how he loved the music. And I was fortunate enough to be on that tour with Mr. Honeyboy Edwards, who was like hand in hand with Mr. Robert Johnson. Yeah, I think he's really amazing. And the music that he left here behind, it will live on forever.
Now, you've also been in a few movies. I saw Tempted and Big Bad Love and Black Snake Moan.
Oh, wow.
Were there other movies that you were also in?
Yeah, I actually got to do a headline movie, man, and I was the main character in that movie called Texas Red, which was pretty amazing. Never been a main character in anything, you know, too much like a movie. The movie was about this guy named Texas Red. He was from Mississippi. He owned the first Juke joint. We finished it in 2021.
What about when they did the Deep Blues?
Deep Blues.
That was when I remember kind of getting tuned into the modern era Juke joint kind of culture.
Yeah,
and it's for people who haven't seen it, Robert Palmer, the great rock journalist and blues guy, and he brings along Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics. It's kind of a narrator. It's a strange brew there.
I love Robert Palmer, man.
But yeah, he was an incredible
He was such
writer.
a good dude. Yeah. And when we would sit and talk, and he was just laid back, and he was just real.
You get some exposure with the movie, and then the next year you finally get the Grammy. I Be Trying 2022, Best Traditional. How'd you feel about getting over the hump to winning a Grammy?
I have to say it was really surprising, but it felt awesome. As I live life, I try to incorporate just about everything that I feel like the universe has given me in that present time. I try to just incorporate everything, but I also try to evolve and just, you know, do something different every year. Every time I record an album, I pray that I'm a little bit better than I was last year. Not just in recording music, but in my songwriting, in my singing, and all of that. This song was called I'm Hurting. I'm not hurting too much anymore.
Have you heard much of the African guy, Ali Farka Touré? Do you know him?
Oh, wow. I have, man.
Because I was going to say, you have something reminiscent.
Yeah. I got turned on to Ali Farka Touré maybe about 5 years ago. I was like listening at the music, and it's before he started singing. So I heard the music and I was like, is that some underground Junior Kimbrough? And then he started singing. And he was like, this is Ali Farka Touré. And I was like, wow. Year before last, 2024, I got a chance to do a few shows with his son, Juke Farka Touré. And, it was one of the most amazing times that I have had. And we talked about, collaborating and doing an album together.
You played, I guess, in many countries by now. Where do you find the most receptive audience for your style?
I love Australia, but I have to say the most receptive audience, they received the Hill Country Blues very well, is France. The youngest generation, they there like from 10 years old to 12 to 16, and they love the music so much, man. And like they listen with passion, and then they play guitar, they play it with passion. They don't want to do anything messed up to make the music sound bad. They want to honor you, and they want to play your music to the best of their ability. And so when we get there, they sing in there the songs word for word, and I think that's so amazing that they sing it word for word. And every time you go there, they treat you really, really nice.
All right, so the time I do remember, I think we were talking about this when we were off camera, was I saw you play at the Tower Records during Jazz Fest.
Oh, yeah.
In New Orleans, and that was phenomenal. I think RL kept having the line, like, you got to get me another beer because this one's got a hole in it. Yeah. They probably used that line.
Yeah,
okay.
He used that all the time.
I bet.
This one got a hole in it, man.
RL Burnside eventually, in the mid-'90s, goes on tour with Jon Spencer
Blues Explosion.
And then he does some stuff on stage and record with that band, or they mix it up. And then he does some with sampled backbeats, tape loops and stuff. What was it like being around the band when you see a senior citizen guy taking some chances like that?
Man, that's a great question. When my Big Daddy first heard about Jon Spencer Blues Explosion, Fat Possum called him. And I remember this like it was yesterday. And he was like, have you ever heard of Jon Spencer Blues Explosion? And my Big Daddy said, no. And he said, well, these guys want to, they want to go on the road with you. They want you to open up for them, and they want to pay you, pretty handsomely. And he was like, okay. And they called us down to Oxford, Mississippi, and they played us some of the music. Kenny and I and, my Big Daddy, we sat there and we listened to a little bit of the music, and, John was hollering. And, the first song was Bell Bottoms. I was like, okay. I looked at Kenny. Kenny looked at me. Then Big Daddy looked at us. We looked at each other. And they talked about it. And And it was like, well, Ariel, they want you to open up for them next weekend to, kind of see what you think about it and see where it goes from there. So they flew us to New York. We got there, and John, manager, came up to us. He was like, hey, man, thank y'all for coming. Thank y'all for coming. And it's like, have you ever heard these guys before? It was like, just, a little bit. They played a little bit for us. But you never heard them live. It's like, no. He reached in his pocket and he said, here, y'all gonna need these. Gave us some earplugs. It turned out to be one of the most amazing experiences I have ever been around, and my Big Daddy as well. John and my Big Daddy just formed a bond. It was almost like a father-son bond, The music was so different, but the love was strong and compassionate, for everybody in the band. We turned out to become really great friends, and just like brothers, and we toured off and on for 2.5, 3 years, and that's where that album come from, As Pocket of Whiskey, because we had got to know each other so well and enjoy each other so much. John wanted to do an album together, and I remember my Big Daddy saying, no, I don't think that's going to sell. I don't think that's going to sell. And John was like, yeah, hey, so what? If it don't sell, man, let's just do something together. And they did. And it turned out to be, one of my Big Daddy's best-selling albums. It changed his audience, so he was no longer just playing for a blues audience. He was playing for a younger audience, plus, rock audience that would come to John's show. They would come to Big Daddy's show because, they got introduced to something different at John's show.
So then he had albums that were more moving towards DJ and electronic kind of backing.
Correct.
That was even more unexpected.
Yeah, correct.
I think he's the only blues guy I can think of who bothered to go there.
Crossed over.
Right. Yeah, it was an unknown space to cross over to. We call this podcast Soul Country, and it reminded me of, there's country blues, and there's, where did this whole thing come from and go to that used to be there. And Clint Eastwood once said there was only two original American art forms, jazz and the Western. So it's kind of like my country is very country and Western. And so one of the things I like to ask about, and I do think a lot of culture comes off those old movies. Do you have any old favorite Westerns?
What comes to my mind right now is Bonanza, because we used to watch it every single day, because that was one of my Big Daddy favorites. It would come on at 10 o'clock in the a.m., and he would not miss it for nothing in the world. And so that's really one of the main ones that come to mind, that and Gunsmoke. I can tell you another thing that I noticed instantly, because that's how we grew up. We once stayed in the house that had what they would call a system, and would you go out and drop the bucket off in there and pull up the water? So just looking at that on the Westerns, it just brought back memories. Like, hey, they live like we live, But of course, it was on TV, so. They made make some money off that thing, but it just made me think about that.
Yeah, how do you see all that? I mean, do you run into other blues players much that are coming from just, they grew up in a city and they don't have that kind of reach to the country aspect of it? Because it seems like it's really crucial to get the full picture, to have some country in there.
That question reminded me of, I did a festival in Helena, Arkansas. King Biscuit, 2012-13, and I was on a panel. It was about 4 more other bands on this panel, and that subject come up, like the old school, the old cats playing the music. They really lived what they played, and so everybody on the panel was like under the impression that nobody up there really lived that lifestyle. So they was like, we can talk until we blue in the face, but we just gonna play this music in tribute to these cats that really paved the way and really lived this lifestyle. These cats that really lived to feed themselves off of this music. whether they made enough money or not. None of us up here is old enough to live that lifestyle of not having, lights in the house and not having running water and all of that. And I had to stop the panel. I was like, no. I said, I actually lived that life for many of years. Till I was about 11, 12 years old, I lived that lifestyle. Not because I wanted to, because I didn't have a choice. My big daddy was a sharecropper. And they was like, you actually live without running water? I was like, I live without running water. I hauled water every day, sometimes 3 times a day. I would walk 1.5 miles each way to haul water, from the neighbor that would let us get water. I said we would haul water 4 or 5 times a day, water to cook with, water to clean with, water to bathe with. We would have to do all of that. And they sat there and they was like agaped for, several minutes, like, wow. Just looking forward to a few collaborations from the movie Sinners. I got to do a couple songs, on that soundtrack of that movie, and just play with a lot of great musicians. Tierney Jackson from Southern Avenue, and Alva Youngblood Hart, as well as Mr. Bobby Rush, and so we all just talked about great things, and hopefully some really, really great collaborations in the future.
How would you like to be remembered in blues history as a legacy?
I like for my music to be left here and remembered for the positive things that I can instill in people to make them their better self, as well as my legacy, to be here with my daughters that love music, and especially my youngest daughter, Anna. She loved music, and so I think she's going to be the one that carry it on. I think she's going to be the very first girl Burnside that play music.
So Cedric, thanks for coming by Soul Country.
Thanks for having me, man.
It was awesome.
Really great time.
It's like a dream. It's real. Picking a few times. Can I feel? I was so blind. I can be. When I'm with you, I can see. Thank you for keeping it real. You notice how to make me feel. Yes, you do now. Hey! Thank you for keeping it real. You notice how to make me feel. Yes, you do now. Yes, you do. Thank you for keeping it real. You notice how to make me feel. Yes, you do now.
Tune in again for more roots music, culture, and lore, and find trailers, highlights, and playlists, as well as a full archive of episodes at soulcountry.com.